Submission ready here ahead of UFC 241, brought to you by Musashi with the man of the hour, Javier Mendez, one of the biggest coaches out there in the MMA world. We're just a few days short of DC coming out and putting on another performance for the people. How does it feel? I mean, you guys have had a pretty crazy relationship. You've been in his corner for such a long time. What's it feel to be going into this fight here in Anaheim with them?
You know, it feels, like it's a brand new fight, and even though it's a title defense, but the energy, DC's enthusiasm is just his attitude is like, man, he's so pumped, ready for this fight. He's doing his workouts like always super, super crazy, and doing a lot of workouts. Bob and myself always have to bring him down a little bit because he's so pumped up for this fight.
What was it like at the start of his training camp? Because DC was pretty open about the fact that it was kind of hard sort of getting back into it, and obviously after UFC 230, he's pretty banged up, he sneezed, his back was done, his hand was done. What was it like sort of getting him straight into this camp, and were you sort of looking to see if he's still that 100% DC that he was in the past?
Well, when the camp started, it was rough.
Yeah?
Yeah, his back was all jacked up. He wasn't able to do anything, but little by little, we started getting into it, and as the weight was coming down with the nutritionist Ian, it really, really helped out, and as the weight came down, the energy came up, the more workout he was doing, and everything came back to normal. I'd say within about a month of when he started, training for this fight, it started coming back. So we've been good about 6 weeks, I'd say. We've been doing really, really good. So 1 month out before that, it was still a little touch and go, but after that, it's like, man, he's brand new again.
Compare this DC physically to the DC we saw at UFC 230 in New York.
Well, there's the differences in the one in New York, if I'm not mistaken, that was a 205. Okay.
That was it, Derek Lewis.
Derek Lewis. Oh,
we know that was a particularly dicey one physically for him.
Yeah, the Derek Lewis one, well, on that one there was like short notice. I mean, and that was one of those ones that fight favored us, really, really, really favored us. So we just wanted to make sure that his wrestling was on point because that was the way to beat Derek, and compared to that one, this one, 9 day. He's way better than he was prepared for this fight than he was that one, by far.
You got to imagine, this is the fight that Stipe Miocic has wanted for such a long time. Do you feel like you're going up against an even more dangerous version of Stipe Miocic? Obviously, the first fight went in Daniel Cormier's favor. You got that first round knockout, but you got to think that Stipe has sort of a counter to the way that fight ended. Do you think this is an even more dangerous version of Stipe compared to the first one?
Definitely, it's a more dangerous fight. Stipe's a great fighter, and he's going to come better prepared than he was last time. And hey, let's face it, one shot got in, took care of business. But we're prepared for 5 rounds. We don't prepare for 1 round, 2 rounds. We're preparing for a 5-round war. DC's ready for a 5-round war, and we'll see if Stipe is, but we know we are.
Let me ask you, if you were, say, in Stipe's corner, if you were Stipe's coach, given the way that the fight ended, would you sort of get him to drill for the next 6 months or year to avoid that from happening? Or do you think that could possibly get into his head a little bit where he's sort of worried about it happening, where, it would almost sort of come to fruition in a sense?
I think if he worries too much about that, it could happen again. And I think they just need to train him. They just train him because it was a one-shot deal. It wasn't like he was being dominated, The fight was pretty close.
Yeah.
A lot of people are sort of talking about if Stipe deserves this rematch. DC went out there for Derek Lewis in the time that Stipe has been away. Stipe hasn't fought since that loss to DC. Do you believe he deserves this rematch against Daniel Cormier, or would you have preferred to see him go out there and have a win before he comes back for another title shot?
Well, it's not for me to say whether he deserves it or not, but he got the shot, so obviously he deserves it. He got it.
We saw DC, he put on Cain Velasquez's wrestling bullhorns, he was in training, he was doing his thing. What update can you give us on Cain Velasquez? Some people are saying we may never see Cain fight again in the octagon. Could that be true? Could that be the last time we saw Cain last time against Francis Ngannou?
It's hard to say, but he loves the wrestling, I can tell you that. He's really enjoying the wrestling. So we'll see, time will tell, right? I mean, I can tell you he's actively training, so we'll see what he wants to do. I mean, he can do it both if he wants.
Would you be disappointed, though, if he didn't have another fight in the UFC? Or he's had an amazing legacy as a champion. Would be something that you think would be fine if he walked away after that Ngannou loss?
I'm always good with whatever the guys want to do. So whatever Cain wants to do, I'm on board. If he wants to fight fight, I'm on board. If he wants to just wrestle, I'm on board. If he doesn't want to do anything, I'm on board. We're friends for life, so it doesn't matter to me what he wants to do.
I think he told us he was fixing up an Airbnb house at one point, and you were supportive with that, so we believe that statement. What did you think of his wrestling performance there? Because a lot of people were talking about the fact that he looked amazing in that ring for a guy that hasn't been pro wrestling before. There was some flips. I believe he did like a flying hurricane. For a guy that's a heavyweight, I mean, what were your thoughts when you saw that?
I thought it was amazing. I thought he performed better than anybody I've ever seen in my whole entire life that came from another sport into wrestling in that short period of time. I thought he did better than anybody ever has.
Just wondering, while we're sort of talking about potential retirements, as far as the stakes for Daniel Cormier, if he wins, a lot of people are already looking at John Jones. I know you guys want to be positive heading into this, but could this potentially be Daniel Cormier's last fight if things don't go to plan this weekend?
Well, for us and me personally, I want him to retire after this fight. You know, I don't want him to continue, but you know, that's me. And Daniel's got another thing going. If Daniel wants to fight, he's going to fight. And the UFC wants him to fight. Guess what? They're going to give him a good offer that he probably can't refuse.
You wanted to retire, sorry, but I'm just curious. That's an interesting comment from you. Can you explain why? Why do you think this should be it?
Well, because he's got a bigger career in the entertainment industry. You know, as an announcer, as a broadcaster, as a TV personality. His life goes way, way beyond the UFC, you know, and I think, for me personally, I don't have a problem him going on to a new life, you know, because he has that opportunity, you know, and, but we'll see, right? I mean, I know the UFC wants him to stick around, but, you know, I think they're probably going to have to come up with a pretty good figure if they want him to stick around after this fight, you know, and we'll see what happens, though, right? Because, you know, I may say this, something happens, and next thing you know, DC says, no, I'm fighting again, you know, that happens all the time, right?
From your perspective and sort of wanting him to retire after this fight, is it also a case of like a risk if he keeps taking these fights, keeps extending this retirement? There's obviously the risk in terms of health, and also what does it kind of add to his legacy in that sense?
Like Dana was talking about Francis Ngannou, for example, being the next guy to fight, so if he wins here.
Well, for me, it's more of what he wanted to do, and I want what's best for him, knowing that he can make a lot of money in the entertainment business. I just want what's best for him, you know, so he's done enough in this sport as far as I'm concerned, you know, so what's going to keep him here? More money.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say the money in a lot of ways would be in the John Jones trilogy fight, you know, and it seems like they kind of want to do it at 205. What would you rather see? Because it seems like if it's 205, it's going to cost the UFC a lot more. If you had it your way, if he continued to fight, would you be against him going down at 205, especially if they wanted to do it in December? Kind of a short turnaround.
And do you think he could do it at 205 at this point in his run?
I've always wanted him to stay at heavyweight.
Yeah.
He's the best at heavyweight. He's proven that, you know, but he's going to go to 205. You know, the UFC would be fine with either.
There's no way to talk him out of that, in your opinion?
You know, I talked to him. He said he beat me at 205, want to fight him at 205. I hope he changes his mind, if it ever happens.
Even if they throw the big bag of money at him?
I hope if they throw the big bag of money at him, I hope it's at heavyweight. But remember, that's only one side. Jones is going to say, why do I want to give him an advantage? You know, so there's a lot of sides here, you know. I think DC and Jones, if they do decide to do it, I think that it'll be at 205.
Just quickly before we wrap up, friend of the program, a guy with an amazing legacy, Luke Rockhold, suffered a brutal defeat, obviously at UFC 239. What was your reaction when you saw that? And I know Dana White said that, you know, Luke's got this amazing modeling career and things outside of fighting, so he might look at retiring. What are your thoughts on sort of what his future holds?
Well, you know, I talked to Luke and I asked what he was doing. He said he was in LA doing some business things, and I said, that's good. Keep busy, doing what you're doing. What he's going to do with his UFC career, that's on him. You know, I don't ever tell those guys, you should do this, you should do that. I listen to them. And the reason why I talk this way about DC too, because I did listen to him. He said he wanted to retire at 40 and move on to this other arena. So that's why I'm pro that. But again, with Luke, it's the same thing. I don't ever talk to him about retirement. I just talk about what are you going to do. And so he's working on things in LA.
And how is he going, like, mentally after that loss? Because we haven't heard from him on social media. We haven't heard from him in the news. Is he doing okay dealing with that loss?
Well, when I talked to him, he seemed to be in great spirits. You know, he was happy, smiling, you know. And, you know, he just said, I'm doing great. I'm in LA. I'm doing some work. And he was happy. You know, I mean, we're friends beyond the MMA, you know. So for me, he's my friend for life. So I'll always be in touch with him. So it's not related to fighting.
I was going to say, I know that you would impress Luke either way as far as retirement, but based on that conversation, did he give you any indication on whether he would continue fighting or not, like other than the work he was doing in LA?
No, he didn't give me any indication about anything. anything other than he was happy working in LA and doing some projects. I don't know if it was modeling, acting, but he was doing projects of that nature, and he was very happy with it.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, do you see guys working together if he does return into his next fight? I know he's been doing a lot of work in Florida.
I don't know what he's going to do for his next fight when it happens, but we'll see, right? I mean, he's walking with us always. He's with AKA for life.
Well, I'll tell you what, the crowd's going pretty crazy.
Just quickly, normally at this point we would get a prediction. We won't get a prediction from you, Javier, but just tell us, where do you think Stipe Miocic is most dangerous as we head into UFC 241? What are the biggest things you guys have to look out for?
Well, you know, Stipe's a big man. He's got good boxing, good power, and he's a good wrestler. So he's actually dangerous everywhere but the ground.
You reckon it's a clear advantage, like for DC on the ground? Is that what he's saying?
I give us the favor in the ground. I really do. But on the stand-up, he's very formidable, and he's proven it.
Tell you what, it's a scene down here around Anaheim. You guys can check it out right now. The crowd is going crazy, and of course, one of the best in the game, Javier Mendez. We can't wait to see what happens. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck this weekend at UFC 241.
All right, thank you.